Final Hour Overdrive continues, powered by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score. Brian Hazio, Doug, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles, McLennan, Keegan Matheson later in the hour from MLB.com, and the Jays making a signing today. What else they could do to salvage the offseason. Chris Johnston coming up here in a moment. We await news on Connor McDavid, if he will be suspended. We believe he will be. It's just a matter of how many games he'll get for that cross-check to Connor Garland on Saturday. And we've got Leafs Lightning tonight, where Joseph Woll will make the start. The Leafs have now won 2 in a row. It was an electric game on Saturday night. And next Saturday, they're in Ottawa. So it's going to be very similar, right? It's going to be a ton of Leaf fans. It's a big game, Ottawa.
And it
obviously
won last time they played, too. Remember that game in Toronto where Ottawa dominated them?
Dummied them, yes. Allmark was good that night. They won 3-0, I think.
Who?
And Linus Allmark.
Oh, really?
Forsberg needed that win yesterday, didn't he, Noodles?
Yeah, he did.
You would think that Allmark, and look, injuries are injuries, but I just looked at the game against Boston. You want a guy that says, I got to get in the net for that game. Like it's the Boston Bruins, the points are like kind of tightening up in the race. I got to get back for that game. And I don't know what the hell's wrong with the guy, but it just seems like the same guys time and time again, out, and it's crazy stuff. I'm so sick of it. It's the one thing that bugs me.
I had a long chat with him yesterday. I mean, he's on the trip, and I don't know if, he's skating. I don't know if he's taking shots yet or whatever, what the timeline is. I don't even ask because you never want to put people on the spot.
But, Jamie, it's kind of venturing into, like, Freddie. Remember Freddie Anderson? It was like, he's just gone away for a while.
Freddie's back now again. Freddie's.
Well, yeah. He disappeared for he just was, gone.
3 months.
And you ask around, and people are like, I don't know where that guy went. He went on surgery on his own. It's just like, what the hell? And then they just show up and they're like, I'm back, by the way, and I'm playing. Okay.
Well, before the break, I wanted to bring something up that was brought to my attention yesterday at the media meal. And I don't know if it rings true, but it is of some of the games recently, and you could tie it to that Leafs-Montreal game, is there's almost been 2 games within a game so many times this year. Lead changes. Like 3-0 is not a safe lead. Boston was up 5-3 on the Sens, and the Sens won that in a shootout 6-5. How many times have we seen teams giving up leads where, Edmonton came back a couple times in a row, 2 or 3 times in a row last week? It's not just, recently. I feel like this year it's been a really weird year for comebacks and weird stories, almost where you think a game is dead in the water. It's 4-1 for a team, and then you turn it off, and all of a sudden it's 4-3, and you're like, what the hell happened there? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on that. There should be some analytics to it.
There probably is. I honestly think it's probably been happening for a few years. I mean, I think it gets back to our conversation last week. It's a chaotic league. Crazy things happen, and teams just – and the rules are what they are now, too. There's no clutching and grabbing and just, blocking out and all that kind of stuff. You can't control the front of your net the way you used to. And there's just a number of avenues for teams to get back into it, I guess. And the league is a little bit more watered down. There's more parity. And as a result, there's also more of an emphasis on sports science. What I mean by that is you roll over 4 lines, you roll over your 3D pairings, and as a result, you're going to get some mismatches that maybe you wouldn't have gotten in the past. And teams find a way to take advantage of that. And, you mentioned Edmonton. They were in Vancouver on Saturday, and the bigger story by the end of it was the McDavid stuff. But JT Miller looked great. Miller had a couple of points. They won the game, right? Quinn Hughes looked great. And now Patrick Allvin, their GM, came out and spoke to the media today and, basically said, hey, it's very unfortunate. It sucks for all the players because there's so much noise out there. JT Miller is
did he expect anything different?
No, exactly. He knows they know what's happening here. And Miller's just saying, when you come out and you're like, I'm a Canuck, so I'll be a Canuck. That's basically him saying, get me out of here. And it sounds as if, there's maybe been deals with the Rangers that were close, maybe deals with the Devils. And it sounds like he wants to go across the country and jump over the border and be somewhere in the Northeast. Rangers, Devils, Boston, something like that. That feels like where JT Miller's going to end up.
Well, it has to be the right deal. We talked about it last week, and you can't just trade him for pennies on the dollar. He's a hell of a player. We saw it the other night. Like, when he digs in, he's tough to play against.
Yeah, exactly.
He was battling with Draisaitl that night. Like, that was some big boy hockey too. Like to me, he's a hell of a player and could be a difference maker. He certainly doesn't look happy though. Like, and again, he's a crabby player, and I don't mind guys that are crabby players. They play with an edge, play with an attitude. But it'll be interesting to see if Jimmy Rutherford, who is, you know him best. He's a grizzled vet. Like, he's not going to get pennies on the dollar for him. He's going to get a quality return for JT Miller if he trades him, and he should, because Miller's an impact player.
It seems like you kind of have to at this point. If you're in Vancouver, you've got to do something different. Joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline, here's our TSN hockey insider, Chris Johnston. How close are we here to seeing JT Miller being dealt from Vancouver?
That's a tough one to put a handle on. Certainly, obviously, talks got it heated enough over the weekend that there was some thought he might have to be pulled out of the lineup before Saturday's game. And, I think that the hard part with trade talks is obviously Vancouver has been, pretty involved, I think, for a while. And especially here the last 7-10 days, it seems like the focus has largely been on, moving Miller, finding a fit there. But, there's only so many places they can trade him, as you alluded to, with his no movement clause. And they haven't quite gotten it across the finish line. But, look, all things being equal, it's not been a nice stretch for the organization, for Miller personally. And, I do think that there's a hope to get something done, but that doesn't always guarantee you're going to find a resolution and a trade that makes sense because, as you guys are mentioning there, I heard the intro, pretty darn good player. You don't want to be giving him away and immediately regretting it.
Yeah, and Alvin came out today, their GM, and said, obviously, he believes they're a playoff team. They were in the playoffs last year. They won the division.
Yep.
And not that I expected them to punt, clearly. But
but like the Noodle said last week, you're talking about, or whoever said, like a young defenseman or this, are you still a playoff team if that's what you get back for JT Miller?
Well, that's the question, though, CJ. Like, if what is poison this season is Miller or something of that along those lines, maybe it's irrelevant what you get back. What's more important is you get something out of there.
Yeah, but I do think the Canucks are prioritizing getting, at least another forward that can make an impact because, taking this player out of the lineup, even when he's having an off year, was pretty effective. And then went over Edmonton the other night and he's had some good games on the recent road trip when they came through the East Coast. And so, I think that they're mindful of not wanting to weaken their lineup too much in the short term to make this move, even if it is to some degree viewed as a bit of addition by subtraction. Obviously he logs big minutes for them, literally plays in all situations for the Canucks and, put up 100 plus points last year. So, I think that they would be getting a forward back in whatever type of trade they make at minimum. And then, we'll have to see what the other pieces line up as, but they want players. They don't just want, magic beans. This isn't prospects and draft picks kind of deal.
So CJ, can you see, like we just named a few teams in that, do you think there's a bigger market for him, or is it really, just kind of resigned to just 2 or 3 teams because each controls his own fate? And really, how do you fit that contract structure, heading back the other way as well? It might have to be dollars in, dollars out type of thing as well.
Yeah, that is certainly the challenge of doing a deal like this in season. You could, I think, widen the field, maybe even in terms of what JT Miller himself might consider in an off season, when the prospect doesn't mean, hey, you're getting traded tomorrow, moving across the country with, a young family and everything that he has. I think that the teams, though, there might be a couple more that you mentioned than what you mentioned. I know Dallas at least made a call there. I don't think that they're certainly the favorite. Carolina has been involved with Vancouver, both on Pettersson when it looked like he might be available, and I think that they've been sniffing around Miller as well. And so I don't know that it's a 2 or 3 team race. But certainly the Rangers, it appears, have been the most motivated, I would say, of the teams. They were having Miller talks with the Canucks, at some point before Christmas. And then, they were the team over the weekend that it seemed at least like things were advancing beyond just tire kicking stages. So, given all that's gone on in New York and I believe it is a place that Miller would be happy to return to if it came to that and they could reach a deal. I do think that there's more than 2 or 3 teams, but this is a hard one to handicap because it kind of goes on again, off again, on again. Surely at some point something's got to give, and they've got to find a way, I think, to rip the Band-Aid off and allow everyone to move forward.
CJ, do we know what the crux of the issue is here? Like, does he not like Vancouver anymore? Does he hate Pettersson, or are people tired of his act? Like, what exactly went down here where at the beginning of the season we were like, can these guys, bounce back and be a cup contender again? And then now all of a sudden we're in January and it's like JT Miller's the way out the door.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding, this isn't driven by Miller at all. I mean, this is the Canucks coming to him. I don't think it's a case where he's not unhappy in Vancouver, where he's tried to initiate a move. I mean, he's probably not happy with how public this has been and how, he's getting questions about it. Obviously, it hasn't been a good stretch here the last month, but that a lot of that stems from the fact the team was, having active trade discussions with his name attached to them, and it started to get out in the public realm. But I think the original story that we've talked about, there's definitely truth there that, Miller and Pettersson haven't saw eye to eye. I think it went on long enough that the Canucks, were listening on both players and were wanting to consider their options. And now it seems that they're focused, at least for the time being, on trying to move Miller out of town just to, maybe as a way to sort of ease that situation, to change up the dynamic in the locker room. But, I don't think it should be viewed as this is all Miller's fault. I think that there's a little more nuance there. And really, even when you're talking about Pettersson, I mean, his production, there's no way around it, has not been what he's paid to do. I mean, basically since he signed that deal last March, I think it was early March, he's all of a sudden went from a guy who was a 100-point player to a 70-point player, after getting paid. And so, I think that there's a lot going on around that team, and Miller obviously is part of it, but he was a big part of the success they had last year too, and some of the seasons prior. So, I think that they've gone down this road because he is a marketable commodity. He's the older of the two players between him and Pettersson, and they've sort of appear to have settled on this as where they want to go. But I think it would be wrong for any of us to look at it and say this is all JT Miller's fault. I think there's a lot of blame to go around for why the Canucks are where they are this season.
With Chris Johnston, our TSN Hockey Insider, Leafs Lightning tonight. Fraser Minton will get back into the lineup. I guess Max Pacioretty's day-to-day with some sort of an injury. But what I find interesting is Minton steps in, plays the middle of the ice. Pontus Holmberg will be second-line center. They're moving Domi to the wing. What is your read on that situation? Tavares out.
Minton?
Yeah, Fraser Minton's going to play center, and Holmberg's going to play center, and it sounds as if Domi's going to play second-line left wing. What do you make of that, Chris?
Well, it's been a tough year for Max, right? I mean, there's no way around it. I think he's gone 14 games now without a goal. He started the year on a 22-game goalless drought. Even if he's primarily a playmaker, his point totals haven't been where they've wanted to be, and I think they're trying to make life on him as easy as possible. It's obviously a little less defensive responsibility playing on the wing. So, I don't know that it's just about Domi. I mean, it's also a reflection of how well they feel about Fraser Minton. I mean, he's really, I think he's taken a step forward in the organization's eyes this year. It wasn't an ideal start to his year, having the injury right at the start of camp and missing all of the NHL camp. But with how he played in his first go-round with the Leafs and what he's done in the American Hockey League, I mean, I think this guy's likely to be a full-time member of the team next season, and he's someone they trust now. And so that's kind of how we get to where we are, I think. But, for Domi, this is a great opportunity, not necessarily about his line tonight, but in general, with Tavares out, I have to feel that there's going to be more, offensive type of roles for him. Because, let's face it, the lines move around pretty routinely. A week ago, we were talking about Steven Lorentz being on the top line. So, I think that there's going to be more minutes there for Domi, and he's got to get his game going because he's been underperforming through this first half of the season.
Joseph Woll gets another start. He's really stabilized his game. He's been in a groove, and Anthony Stolarz. So what can you talk about? I thought I read that there was a definitive timeline or some form of a rough timeline for him to return. Can you talk about that and just maybe see where we're at?
I haven't heard anything more definitive since we've last spoke, but I'll tell you today I was down at the skate and, it looked like, he was on the ice for a long time before his teammates were out there, but certainly was doing a lot. I mean, a lot of up and down, like movement in the crease, which I see as progress from where he'd been ago. And so everything appears to be good for Stolars. I mean, Woll was tremendous, obviously, especially when the Leafs got a lead in Montreal and made some pretty acrobatic saves there on Saturday night. And there's been a little bit of debate internally about not wanting to use him too much, being mindful of where he's at. But he's told the everyone around the Leafs that he feels good, and so he gets a fifth straight start tonight. But I think that it's always just with a little bit of caution, because he's coming up on what will soon be his most number of appearances as an NHL player, and we've obviously still got a lot of runway left on the season, and it's important to go into the playoffs if they can with two healthy goalies they trust. And the best case scenario for that would be Woll and Stolars.
Again, based on what we saw at morning skate today, they're shifting up the defense pairing as well. Morgan Rielly will play with Jake McCabe tonight, which I think is appropriate, because I thought Morgan really, really struggled on Saturday night. I think he's the Max Domi equivalent on defense. He's got to give way more. It just has not been good enough, and they're moving Morgan around here. He's played with Ekman-Larsson. He's played with Myers, who they sat the other night. That's why Myers is coming out tonight. He's given a chance with Tanev. I think this is them throwing one more thing at the wall, because McCabe's been so good. Jake McCabe has been so good this year, but they're asking McCabe to play on his right side, which, if I'm Jake McCabe, you're a team guy, you're willing to do it, but aren't you looking around saying, like, I got to move over? Like, I'm having a great year with Tanev playing the left side. Why do I have to move? Because Riley's not pulling his weight right now.
That one doesn't make sense to me.
I don't listen. I get it, because they got to get Morgan Rielly going. Like, he is really struggling, and he's capable of more. But if you're Jake McCabe, CJ, you're probably thinking, really, like, I gotta shift to my offside now and be a little bit out of sorts trying to prop this guy up at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair, but you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's about trying to find the best mix of these guys, and with Morgan, he has at times been, I think some of his best stretches as a Leaf have been when he's had a pretty reliable defensive partner beside him, someone who kind of can maybe do some of the things he doesn't, and vice versa. And McCabe is kind of an unsung hero, I think, a little bit with this team. Doesn't get a ton of publicity necessarily, but we even saw it when he was out of the lineup here for a brief couple games, after that fight. He's really missed when he's not there. And so his defensive presence, I think, is just being used here to try to help Morgan. He has played a fair bit over the years on his offside. I don't know how wild about it he is or not. But, at this point, the Leafs they're trying a little bit everything with that blue line, and some of it has been injury related. But performance factors into it too. And, I agree with you. I mean, Morgan's the horse on this blue line, and he's definitely got more to give than what we've seen this year in terms of his results.
Yeah, for sure. What's your guess on McDavid and his suspension?
I'm leaning 2 games. I think there's some, we can draw a little bit of similarities to the Matthews cross-check on Dahlin in the outdoor game a few years ago. Obviously in that 2 players with no real history of crossing the line, engaged in a battle, frustrated, whatever you call it. So I think 2 games would be consistent with what we've seen a little bit in the past. But I'm always open to a surprise when it comes to Department of Player Safety.
Yeah, that's true. You got to be on edge. All right, CJ, we'll leave it there. Thank you for doing this.
All right, guys. Enjoy the game.
You got it. Chris Johnston joining us here on the Maple Toyota Hotline. Count on Maple Toyota for the right winter tire package for your Toyota. Trade in your old tires, buy a new set, and get $40 back. Visit mapletoyota.com. Yeah, we'll see what comes of it tonight. The game's on TSN Radio, and it should be a good game. It's a Monday night, but Tampa's a good team. They've won 2 in a row. Leafs have won 2 in a row. See what we got here.
Usually great games with Tampa.
Yeah. Generally speaking, they're really good games.
Monday, like you said, Monday night, anything. There's always some juice.
I don't know if did you guys discuss Braden Point missing a game?
He was late for the meeting, right?
Yeah,
that's still tough to pull the trigger on that one. Where it's like, I got to scratch you, man.
But you know what? Like I respect it a ton. Like I don't know if it got a lot of play. Like I don't know if it got a lot of play north of the border, but like it, that kind of was almost like a news dump for me. I was like, oh, that's a weird one. Braden Point not playing for that. Like that would have been a massive story in Canada. Like, he's a superstar.
That's a good
top
point.
line centerman. Like, that's a big story. Like, and it just kind of like flew under the radar. Yeah, Braden Point not playing tonight.
And it's one of those things, Jamie, where it's a rule, and for some reason it's so important. NHL meetings always start, in my experience, they always start at 15 minutes early. So a 12 o'clock penalty kill meeting or just a 12 o'clock general team meeting, it's at 12 o'clock. Everyone is sitting in the room at 11:45, so the meeting just starts. So if you're 5 minutes early for a meeting, it seems like you're late. And if you're 5 minutes past when the actual time is, then you're missing a game. And it's one of those things where it seems like you get off, you kind of get off the hook because it's like a third or fourth line guy that would do it. But then you get the situation where your superstar does it, and it's like, he's gone too.
It's a big one, man. Yeah, it's a big one. And it broke right before the game. I think that was the thing. You didn't have a full day to talk about it, Noodles. If I can recall correctly, It was like 6:45 or whatever. We got news. Hey, by the way, Point's not playing because...
Yeah, Dave Rendorf tweeted it out.
Yeah, it was like, wow, that's kind of crazy. But
that was kind of like a nothing to see here news dump where it's like maybe there's more to the story, but I was more just like I thought that one just kind of flew under the radar because if that's one of the 7 Canadian, if Brady Tkachuk, Austin Matthews, like the captains or top tier stars of any team across Canada, Pedersen, Miller, you name it, Scheifele, like that's the equivalent.
Yeah,
not
of course.
playing tonight. That's a big story, and it just kind of was like, yeah, okay, like.
I think it's the nature of the market, man. Like that speaks to it. Down in Tampa, just in January, it's not going to blow up,
Yeah.
And they got through without him, and again, Tampa's in a pretty good spot going into tonight and throughout the rest of the year. All right, Keegan Matheson coming up. We'll get back into our best bets powered by FanDuel as well. And we got the Leaf game we continue to tee up, which, of course, is right here on TSN Radio. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Keegan Matheson will join us here in a moment from MLB.com. We just had Doogie in here. We've been talking about Saved by the Bell, the show Saved by the Bell and Screech. And took Doogie a couple hours. But I'm not surprised by this. He said he has no idea what Saved by the Bell is. Like, he'd never heard of it before, no idea. Again, I'm not surprised. Doogie's young. That's not a shot at Doogie.
Yeah. Oh.
It is kind of an example of like different generations and what you might know and what you might not know.
Cause always talks about it with whoever he's working with. It brings up a song or a band or whatever, and no idea. Like, just crazy to never hear of it.
But this is what, like, I can remember. I have vivid memories of my dad yelling, be like, you don't know that. I'm like, I'm 10. How would I know about a show from your childhood? You know what I mean? Like, it would be The Honeymooners. You don't know that? I'm like, no, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, I don't know that. And it's the same thing now. Like, every generation, you get older and you're just flabbergasted that people wouldn't know everything you know and everything you've experienced. And I think actually we might get to a point one day where we just have to test like the line of pop culture knowledge for Doogie. Like, where do you draw the line on? Like, do you know this person? Do you know this show, this movie, this
Maybe
reference?
Sports/pop culture.
Sports would be a good one, too.
It is, because you're right. Like, he probably, like Goodfellas, all these classic movies that we talk about, like Forrest Gump, you name it, Good Will Hunting, probably Shawshank Redemption. Like, those for movies. Like, I'm not lying. Just before we came back on, I was spinning through, like, Instagram, and there was, like, a meme of Gilligan's Island. This is too, like,
that's the
old
child, but
remember.
that's the kid. That was in like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, like
wasn't it?
late 60s, early 70s.
No chance, man.
There was only 3 seasons of that, but I watched that as a kid, and there was a meme of, like, the skipper was Doug Ford, Gilligan was Trudeau or whatever, and I just burst out laughing, but I got the joke, but I'm like, there's nobody in their 20s that would get
nobody
that joke
would have a
because
clue.
nobody watched Gilligan's Island.
Zero.
Like, you're right, there is a line, and we'll have to find out where Doogie's
find out
line
where it is. The line of Doogie, like, pop culture demarcation. Where is that? Like, even Seinfeld, which I would have to believe Doogie knows who Jerry Seinfeld is. You're aware of Jerry Seinfeld and the show Seinfeld?
Of course.
Okay. That's good to know. Doogie knows that.
Right.
Keegan will join us here in a moment. The reason I bring that up is I just saw the Toronto Sun tweeting out, this is when you know you have way too much money. Jerry Seinfeld turned down an offer of $25 million for his Porsche 917K race car. He's got some very exclusive Porsche race car. Someone offered him $25 million, and he said, no, I'm fine. Like, do you know how sickening that is? Like, that's when, like, you have so much money that you'd rather hold on. He probably doesn't drive that thing ever. It probably sits in a garage somewhere.
He likes looking at it as Sunday morning coffee, and then he goes back into his house.
Like twice a year, he goes out, checks out the car. It's still there, looks good. See you later. Someone offered him $25 million cash. No thanks. No, thank you.
That's crazy.
Like, that's wild, man. I'm not a car guy, so like, I can't fathom that idea. But that's just disgusting wealth. That's Anthony Santerre type wealth, and Tony Santerre is Santander is a Blue Jay. He signed a 5-year deal. There's a bunch of bonuses in there, but it's worth just over $90 million. And the Jays have landed somebody. This is a big moment. They needed this.
Yes.
They've landed somebody. Here's our friend Keegan Matheson from MLB.com. Keegan, good to see you as always. Can you put this into perspective? How significant this signing is, not only from a team building standpoint, but from a stop the bleeding standpoint for the Blue Jays this offseason?
Yeah, we're talking about something else now, which is what they needed. I think 5-6 hours ago, when we planned to talk this evening, it was probably going to be about how big of a mess they made on Friday with Roki Sasaki. Now we're talking about something good. And Santander has made sense all offseason, guys. This is an easy fit. They need power. He hits for power. They need lefty. He can hit lefty as a switch hitter. There's nothing complicated about it. It just makes sense. And this has changed what we are talking about. We're not talking about them coming in second. Somehow nobody's reported who came second in this. It's funny how that changes when the Blue Jays are not there to crap on by certain folks.
Where's that report? Where's that report? Who else was in on this guy?
It's funny that nobody's tripping over themselves to tweet that out for 100 points on Twitter. Maybe in a few minutes
kidding.
here.
No kidding.
But this one just makes sense, guys. And we are no longer talking about Roki Sasaki and how ugly that was. And this is what the Blue Jays want. You know, they want to get away from that narrative and want to get away from being that second place, blah, blah, blah. And guys, I was excited when I was coming on. I saw the tweet about the Blue Jays are screech. And this might say a little bit more about me, but I thought we were talking about the black rum. And before I watched the Twitter clip, I know a little more about Black Rum than Saved by the Bell. I was getting excited, but we're not talking about that anymore.
No, we're
not. It's a win for the Blue Jays, and Santander is solid, rock solid. Everybody loves the guy, and he does what the Blue Jays need. It's a win.
Keegan, do you think there's anything leading into spring training and bringing it back to the Dome for the start of the season that this management group could do to get the fan base kind of off their back? Like, is there anything that could possibly make that happen?
Vladdy. It's always Vladdy. I think at this point. And if they can
find a way to
extend...
But what does it say that they might have to overpay to ease the fan base? Doesn't that doesn't even make sense to say that.
It's tough. It's tough because in this position, you're not getting a discount on Vladdy whatsoever. You need to be pushing beyond what even his top market value could be. But to hardcore fans, and I think to casual fans as well, which is something, guys, I try to remember. The average baseball fan is my buddy who watches a game a week. It's my mom. It's your uncle. They love Vladdy. That's what's going to get 90% of fans. Not the loudest fans online, but most fans. That's what's going to get them back in, is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. being a Blue Jay long-term. Bo Bichette would be another one of those, but I think Vladdy is far likelier and has expressed that more so. With Vladdy, guys, it keeps coming back to him. Everything comes back to Vladdy because they're trying to get someone to take their money. They're trying to have a long-term star, and they have proven, as they chase after Juan Soto, Corbin Burns, Shohei Ohtani, they've proven they've gotten money. If you're Vladdy and his agents, you're pointing at all of those saying, beautiful, beautiful, because you know the Blue Jays have that money if they want to spend it. Not only is Vladdy good, he is beloved. He is a face of a franchise. I don't think there's 30 faces of a franchise in baseball, guys. It's about being more than just the best player on your team. Vladdy's embraced it. He's embraced the city that's not always been embraced in baseball. And I think Vladdy is still the big one. He's going to be that big one. It's going to be the story, the question on the first day of camp in, God, I'm scared of myself. 3 weeks here. I need to get myself together. But this is going to be everything revolving around Vladdy still.
So, Keegan, if you have a crystal ball and it comes across your desk and it says, Vladdy signs a long-term deal, what is there a number you have in your mind, a term? Like what would this look like that you would be like, okay, they got it done, and it might be an overpay or whatever, but what does this look like?
At this point, it would probably start with a 4 if you're doing it right now. And annual value, I mean, I need to do a better job of this, of speaking in annual value. We do a better job of that in hockey and other sports, but the term matters as well. You're probably talking 10 or 12 years. So what's the annual on that? Is it hovering around that 40? Is it 38 where the Blue Jays can get him if there's more term involved? Term matters a lot. This 5th year mattered for Anthony Santander. Year 6 mattered for George Springer. Year 4 mattered for Hyun-Jin Ryu when you're a veteran. I think it probably starts with a 4 at this point, and you've got to be getting pretty close to that $40 million mark at that point. Now, you're paying a premium. You are paying the top value. Probably a number that Vladdy isn't going to grow much from through the year, but that's the cost of doing business right now with a guy who, frankly, guys, Vladdy holds all the power right here. Mm-hmm. This is in Vladdy's, the palm of his hand right now. He's playing it well so far. I think he's going to play it well. He's going to be smart with this, and anything right now needs to start with a 4.
With Keegan Matheson, yeah, exactly. And he also understands everything that we've laid out here, that the fan base is up in arms, that the front office is reeling. Like, you're right. Santander signing is a win for the Jays. It's a good sign. It's a move in the right direction. But what happened on Friday with the Guardians and the Sasaki chase was a complete and utter embarrassment and disaster. And they, like, Miles Straw, now they're just stuck with this guy. Does he play a game for them? What do you see the plan being? Because they've got him under control for a while at decent money, and they're not getting anything out of it because Sasaki decided to sign with the Dodgers.
I could see a way, guys, if Dalton Varsho is not ready from his shoulder surgery in September, maybe Miles Straw is that glove-first defender that you play a few games out of the start of the season. But Cleveland paid him to play in AAA last year. And the Guardians getting the Blue Jays to take that contract is probably one of the best moves of the offseason for them. I'm shocked at that move. And guys, when that move came down, I think it was around 11:30 a.m., you take that as a sign that the Blue Jays know what they're doing and have this lined up with Roki Sasaki. When that happened, I'm staring at a story on my screen right in front of me right here that I started writing to be ready that the Blue Jays had signed Sasaki. Because when you make that move out ahead of everyone else, you better get it right. The Dodgers stood there confidently, probably chuckling a little bit. They waited for Sasaki to come to them. Then they made their move, and they made a better move. The Blue Jays were extremely aggressive, which you've got to be, but you need to know where your next step is coming. And the amount of texts I've gotten from around baseball with other media, people in other front offices, has been not exactly positive for Toronto's Blue Jays lately. They got their ankles broken, and they tore the arse out of their pants on the way down. Man, that was not pretty. That was as tough a deal as you are going to see in a long time. They got screeched. Not the type of screeched in I like, but they got screeched.
It wasn't Newfoundland screeching. It was like the bad screech.
Keegan, we were talking about the welcoming committee.
No.
We were talking about the welcoming committee the Dodgers could throw out there. That's like Dave Roberts, Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. Like, is there truth to the Jays kind of pitch committee with Dalton Varsho and Chad Green? Who was the other guy?
And Bichette.
And Bo Bichette. Like, where's Vladdy in this situation? Where's Barrios? Where's Gosman? Why aren't they? Do they just say that's not my business, or what the hell's up with that?
Yeah, when you compare that to the Dodgers, that's if a player could pick between one of those dinner parties, I think it's going to be pretty clear which one they're going to take.
And I'm not saying the Dodgers did do that. I'm just talking about the comparison of the two. No, like, it's quite a difference.
It's a different planet. It doesn't compare whatsoever. And frankly, it shines a light on what the Blue Jays are up against right now. Look at those three players. Chad Green is what on this roster? The number 3, number 4 reliever in a free agent year. Dalton Varsho has a couple of years left. Bo Bichette is in his last year and is, I think we all know, not the most vocal, not the most outspoken publicly player. And that's okay. That's just fine. But in this situation, I was pretty surprised to read that report. That does not compare whatsoever to what the Dodgers would have brought to the table, not just with guys like Betts and Freeman, but you have Ohtani, you have Yamamoto. And that's an example. The Dodgers are a beast of their own, but that's an example of once you start to acquire these Japanese players, you can start to build on that with that relationship. It's what the Blue Jays are desperate to do. But when you compare those two pitches and then you compare the shot at a World Series, I mean, the Blue Jays would have had to really wow him with their pitching plan or something like that. But in terms of 1 versus 1, it's a complete no contest.
With Keegan Matheson, MLB.com. So where is the next step going to take the Blue Jays? In your opinion, what is the next position that they need to attack here? Because I think we all concede and we all know they still need to do more if they want to have any chance of competing this year.
Yeah, they need one more big bat. And Santander was a great step in the right direction. They still need more power. Pete Alonso fits that beautifully, I think, still at this point. He can play some first base while Vladdy plays some third. If I'm Vladdy, I would like to go to free agency, having just shown the league I can competently play third base. You're not going to win a Gold Glove. It's not going to wow people. But not only do you open up the number of teams who are interested in you, you get away from the conversation of, hey, baseball doesn't pay first baseman anymore. Look at Pete Alonso. We're having that conversation over and over. Vladdy needs to get himself away from that convo a bit. If I'm him, I'm happy to go play third base. I think he would be. Pete Alonso makes a ton of sense. But adding another bat, Profar will be another one that's talked about. On the pitching side, I think that's important as well. Max Scherzer is one name. Jose Quintana is another, I think, out there the Blue Jays will be interested in. If you do that, you slide Yariel Rodriguez to the bullpen as a long guy, an upside guy, and suddenly everything's starting to look okay. Suddenly you can look around and say, you know what, the AL is not terrifying. Now, that should not be the goal. This team should be chasing the AL East, not the 6th wildcard spot again. But pretty quickly, the Blue Jays can get back to a spot where this is realistic. They can make another postseason run. They just got to spend a bit more. You don't sign a closer in Jeff Hoffman, even more than Santander, guys. You don't sign a closer, a top-end closer, if you're not going to try to give them some games to close. They need to spend a little bit more, need to push in a little harder on this. Santander's a good step, but you can't stop there.
Yeah, and I would expect they'll keep going, but we'll see if they're screech in the end, or maybe they close. Maybe they go Zach Morris on this and start landing Alonso and another arm, maybe a bullpen arm, and all of a sudden everything's starting to move in the right direction. Keegan, always great seeing you, man. Thank you for doing this.
Hey, you got it, fellas. We'll talk soon.
You got it. Keegan Matheson of MLB.com. Got some breaking news here. Connor McDavid's been suspended for 3 games. Yeah, 3 games for Connor McDavid, and Tyler Myers also got 3 games.
I'm surprised. I thought it was a very simple comparable, the Matthews comparable.
So do I.
But that was here's what I thought about originally, guys. Maybe I'm wrong. How long ago was that Matthews crosscheck? 4 years ago?
3 years ago, maybe. Something like that. It was the outdoor game in Hamilton, I think.
What are you saying? There's like a tax on it? Like it's now 3 games?
No, I'm just saying I think the league is – well, I'm just saying maybe there is – they're trying to head in a direction where that stuff is off limits. And 3's a little stiffer. Like it's stiffer than obviously. Like and to me, it's saying, okay, yeah, it was an easy comparable to Austin Matthews – but that was 4 or 5 years ago. Like
but Noodles,
I don't know.
The X factor and all of the if you put it all in a blender, I thought the X factor was he's Connor McDavid. So that's 2, and then it's -1 because he's McDavid. That's what I thought he was going to get.
But you know what? You're right. I think what we've been discussing is right. But here's the other thing: they don't want to be known as like, okay, we're going to give preferential treatment if that was. Tom Wilson, repeat offender. I'm saying somebody else. Like name a player that hasn't been suspended before but is a 4th liner. Steven Lorenz, if that was Steven Lorenz who's done that. Like, to me, I think it sends a stronger message going, okay, this is no fly zone here, and it doesn't matter who does that. And maybe that's just.
Well, yeah,
listen,
you'd have to listen
to Edmonton.
Listen, you had to be. You knew he was getting suspended when you get a hearing, you're getting suspended.
Yeah, but I honestly would have had no problem, even if they said behind closed doors, the best player in the game, he's got 1 game. I would walk away.
I was bracing for that. I thought he was going to get one.
Yeah.
I thought it would be a McDavid tax the other way that, or maybe two because they gave it to Matthews. And Matthews was on a big stage. Again, that was the outdoor game. It was I don't see the difference. I'd be curious to hear the explanation as to why this one is different, why McDavid will get 3 and Matthews got 2, but he's out for 3.
Think that the other thing, too, is this is regular season. If we're talking playoffs, I think that's 1. I really do. I personally think that that's a 1-game suspension in the playoffs. Wasn't it who cross-checked McDavid from Vancouver in the playoffs there? I think he got 1 game, cross-checked him in the face near the end of the game there. Was it Soucy?
Was it or I can't remember. Was it Zadorov?
Yeah, it was a defenseman.
Zadorov didn't get suspended, I don't think. I thought he got fined. Anyway, I don't remember what you're talking about.
But I think going back to it, I think there is like a regular season component. I think it's different than 4 years later or whatever. I understand
I don't see the difference. I mean, I don't get how this is. If I'm in Edmonton, no, I understand
inflation.
That. Yeah, but how is there inflation? Like it's not like this is some epidemic, like stick swinging. Maybe because it's a package deal. Maybe because he did it and then Myers did it, and they said, you know what, forget it. But like Matthews, that was 2 or 3 years ago, and to me it was a carbon copy, and it's the best player in the game. And
maybe that's why McDavid didn't get off the hook, is because Myers was sitting right there after them, and the league couldn't go out to them and say, hey, you're getting 1, and then they're like, well, what the hell's up with Myers?
It's possible.
And Joe from the Bridge brings up, like, Riley got 5, right, for the Ridley Gregg. Like different, cross-checks to the head, I do think that they have to.
I didn't think Riley's was even half as bad as that McDavid or Matthews cross-check. Like, to me, his rolled up the shoulder.
Context of the thing.
Yeah, it was you chased him down. It was after the whistle had blown. Yeah. It was, Greg had done nothing to you, like, personally to.
Right. Yeah. Listen, 3 is rich for the best player in the world, but I you know what? I think there's a lot of people that are saying, like, I think CJ hung up from us going, the league could surprise me, because I think everyone was thinking 1 or 2 games. Like, if anything, the league surprised people on the other way, and 3 is rich, but it's 3.
He'll miss Washington, Vancouver again on Thursday, and then Buffalo next Saturday. So, and the Oilers are on a 6-game homestand.
Yeah, they've been on the road a lot.
Yeah, they've been on the road a lot, and so he's going to miss Ovi tomorrow night. McDavid versus Ovi, and then again the rematch against Vancouver on Thursday, and then Buffalo and the Leafs are in there in a couple of weeks. So obviously he'll be back for that. But they're in the midst of or just about to start a 6-game homestand, and Edmonton's been red hot. Prior to Saturday night, they had been winning a lot of games, and they almost came back. They were down 3-0. They almost came back on Saturday. All right, Best Bets brought to you by FanDuel. Coming up, OverDrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 2. All right, it's been a fun one today. Great NFL action over the weekend. The NFL, Lloyd Christmas, totally redeemed themselves. Awful the wild card weekend. Great weekend this past weekend. It's going to be an awesome one next weekend. Every incredible playoff moment on TSN is powered by Bud Light, a refreshing taste that's easy to enjoy. Tune in game day for pulse-pounding action. You got Wednesday through Saturday golf this week, too, at the Farmers, right? They do the one, like, random Wednesday through Thursday, so Jimmy Nance can go call it and then fly to KC for the football game.
Then I think they're going back there for the Genesis.
Yes, they are. It's not because Riviera won't host it because of the LA wildfires, so it sounds like Torrey Pines going to be hosting 2 tournaments over the course of like 4 weeks, which it's a great place. Great. Tigers won there a lot. If Tiger plays in that, he does like Torrey Pines, right?
You think they went to Tiger and said, which is the easiest walk for you?
I wouldn't be surprised if he had a heavy input on where they were going.
Probably
maybe,
did.
man.
Right? They probably had 3 or 4 options, and they're like, what do you think? And he said, Torrey Pines all day. Today's Best Bets powered by FanDuel. Make your picks and assemble a same-game parlay in seconds on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Over the number tonight, 6.5. I think goals are going in tonight. Matthew Nyes, 1 point. William Nylander, 4+ shots on goal. That parlay paying plus 543. Today's Best Bets powered by FanDuel. Live same-game parlays are now available for every NHL game on the FanDuel Sportsbook app. Please play responsibly. Must be 19 plus and physically located in Ontario. All right, it's been a good one today. Big one coming up tomorrow. Yep. Can't wait for it, right? We'll see what the Jays have in store coming off the Leaf game tonight. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for helping out. We appreciate it. Everyone for tuning in today. TV, radio, podcast, web. We appreciate that. We're out of here. Enjoy your evenings. Enjoy the games tonight. We're back tomorrow at
Screech, R.I.P., brother. 4 p.m.
We'll chat then.